In a small, peaceful town nestled between rolling green hills and thick woods, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The people here were close-knit, always ready to lend a helping hand or share a warm smile. But on this particular day, the air felt heavy with sadness, as if even the trees stood still in mourning. The entire town had gathered for a heartbreaking reason: the funeral of Emily Carter, a bright and kind-hearted 12-year-old girl whose laughter once filled every corner of the community. Emily was not just any child. She was the heart of her family and the light of her school. Her teachers often spoke about how she would help classmates who struggled with their lessons, patiently explaining things until they understood. Her friends loved her for her sense of humor and her ability to make anyone feel better on a bad day. And her mother, Sarah, cherished every moment spent with her daughter, whether it was baking cookies together on rainy afternoons or sitting by the window reading stories late into the night. But all that changed one fateful evening. A sudden car accident claimed Emily's life, leaving behind a void so immense that no words could fill it. For days, Sarah barely left her bed, consumed by grief. Friends and neighbors tried to console her, but nothing seemed to ease the pain. How do you move forward when your whole world has been shattered? That question weighed heavily on everyone's minds as they prepared for the funeral. The church was packed with mourners, family members, friends, teachers, classmates, and even strangers who had heard about Emily's story. Candles flickered softly along the walls, casting a warm glow over the somber scene. At the front of the church stood a large photograph of Emily, smiling brightly, her curly hair framing her face like a halo. Beneath the photo rested her favorite things: a stuffed bunny she'd had since she was a baby, a sketch pad filled with her drawings, and a jar of wildflowers picked from the meadow near her home. As the service began, tears flowed freely. The priest spoke gently, reminding everyone of the love Emily brought into their lives and encouraging them to hold on to those memories. He shared stories of her kindness, her curiosity, and her infectious laugh. Each word seemed to pierce deeper into Sarah's heart. She sat in the front row, clutching a tissue in trembling hands, unable to stop the flood of emotions overwhelming her. When it came time for her to place a single white rose on her daughter's casket, she hesitated, her legs feeling like lead. It took every ounce of strength she had to walk up to the casket and lay the flower down. As she stepped back, she whispered, "I love you, my sweet girl," her voice breaking under the weight of her sorrow. After the church service, the procession made its way to the cemetery located on the edge of town. The sky was overcast with gray clouds hanging low, threatening rain. The mourners followed silently, their footsteps crunching against the gravel path. Some carried umbrellas, while others held on to each other for support. It was then that something unusual caught everyone's attention. A stray black cat appeared out of nowhere, trailing behind the group. Its sleek fur glistened in the dim light, and its piercing green eyes seemed to see right through them. No one knew where it had come from, but it moved with purpose, as though drawn to the grieving crowd. At first, people didn't think much of it. Stray cats weren't uncommon in the area, and perhaps this one was simply curious. But as the group reached the gravesite and gathered around the freshly dug hole, the cat did something unexpected. It stopped a few feet away, sat down, and stared intently at the casket. Its gaze never wavered, not even when someone coughed or shifted uncomfortably. The silence grew thicker, almost palpable, as the mourners exchanged uneasy glances. Was this just a coincidence? Or was there something more to this strange visitor? Sarah noticed the cat too. At first she dismissed it as another random detail in a day full of chaos. But as the ceremony continued, she couldn't shake the feeling that the cat's presence meant something. There was something eerily familiar about the way it sat there, calm and composed, as if guarding the grave. Every now and then it would tilt its head slightly, as though listening to something only it could hear. Sarah found herself staring at the cat more than she cared to admit, wondering if it was trying to tell her something, or maybe even comfort her. By the time the final prayers were said and the casket was lowered into the ground, the cat hadn't moved an inch. If anything, it seemed even more determined to stay put. People began dispersing slowly, some stopping to offer condolences to Sarah before heading home. But the cat remained, sitting atop the mound of fresh earth above Emily's grave. Its unwavering presence lingered in everyone's minds long after they left the cemetery, sparking whispers and speculation among the townsfolk. What did it mean? Why was this cat here? And most importantly, why did it seem so connected to Emily? For Sarah, the cat's appearance was both unsettling and strangely comforting. In the midst of her unbearable loss, it offered a tiny glimmer of mystery, a distraction from the suffocating grief that threatened to consume her. As she turned to leave the cemetery, she glanced back one last time. The cat was still there, watching her with those piercing green eyes. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt a flicker of hope, a fragile thread pulling her toward something unknown yet somehow promising. Little did she know, this mysterious creature was about to change everything. The days following Emily's funeral were a blur of numbness and exhaustion for Sarah. She spent most of her time sitting by the window in her living room, staring out at the empty street as if waiting for something, or someone, to appear. The house felt eerily quiet without Emily's laughter echoing through its halls. Every corner seemed to hold a memory. The kitchen table where they used to share breakfast. The couch where they curled up to watch movies. The bedroom that still smelled faintly of her daughter's favorite perfume. It was overwhelming. Yet Sarah couldn't bring herself to change anything. To do so would feel like letting go, and she wasn't ready for that. Meanwhile, whispers about the black cat continued to spread throughout the town. People couldn't stop talking about the mysterious animal that had appeared during the funeral and refused to leave Emily's grave. Some dismissed it as nothing more than a stray looking for shelter or food, but others weren't so quick to write it off. Stories began circulating. Some said the cat never moved from the gravesite, while others claimed it reacted strangely whenever someone mentioned Emily's name. A few even swore they saw it glowing faintly under the moonlight, though no one could confirm whether this was true or just their imagination playing tricks on them. Curiosity eventually drew Dr. Martin Lewis to the cemetery. He was a retired veterinarian who had lived in the town for decades and was known for his deep love of animals. Though he preferred solitude these days, spending most of his time tending to his garden or reading books in his cozy study, the tales of the black cat intrigued him. He decided to investigate, partly out of professional interest and partly because he felt drawn to the story in a way he couldn't quite explain. On a cool, overcast afternoon, Dr. Lewis arrived at the cemetery, carrying a small bag of supplies. The caretaker greeted him warmly and pointed toward Emily's grave. Sure enough, there it was, the sleek black cat perched atop the headstone, its green eyes gleaming with an almost otherworldly intensity. Dr. Lewis approached cautiously, not wanting to startle it. "Well, hello there," he murmured softly, crouching down a few feet away. The cat didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, studying him with what seemed like intelligent curiosity. Over the next hour, Dr. Lewis observed the cat closely. He noticed several things that struck him as unusual. For one, it showed no signs of fear or aggression, which was rare for a stray. Most feral cats would bolt at the sight of a human, but this one remained perfectly calm. Even when Dr. Lewis extended his hand offering a piece of dried meat he'd brought along, the cat merely sniffed it before returning its attention to the grave. It was as if it understood why it was there, and perhaps even why he was there. What fascinated Dr. Lewis the most, however, was how the cat responded to certain words. When he spoke casually about the weather or his garden, it barely reacted. But when he mentioned Emily's name, the cat's ears twitched and its tail flicked, ever so slightly. At one point, he recited a line from a poem he remembered hearing at the funeral, a tribute to Emily's kindness, and the cat let out a soft meow, as though acknowledging the sentiment. Dr. Lewis frowned thoughtfully. Could it be possible that this cat had formed some kind of connection to Emily, or was it simply reacting to the tone of his voice? Determined to learn more, Dr. Lewis visited the cemetery several times over the next few days. Each time the cat was there, steadfast in its vigil. Word of his visits reached Sarah, who decided to return to the gravesite after avoiding it since the funeral. She hadn't been back since that somber day, unable to face the finality of losing her daughter. But something about the stories of the cat pulled at her heartstrings. Maybe it was the hope of finding answers, or maybe it was the need to feel close to Emily again, even if only through this enigmatic creature. When Sarah arrived at the cemetery, she found Dr. Lewis sitting cross-legged on the grass near the grave, jotting notes in a small notebook. The cat was perched on the headstone as usual, gazing down at the earth below. Upon seeing Sarah, Dr. Lewis stood up and greeted her warmly. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said gently. "This cat, it's unlike any I've ever encountered." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the animal. "I've heard," she replied quietly. "People say it hasn't left since the funeral." She hesitated, then added, Do you think it has something to do with Emily?" Dr. Lewis sighed, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know what to believe," he admitted, "but I can tell you this much. It's behaving in ways I can't easily explain, and it seems connected to her in some way." Sarah took a step closer, her chest tightening with emotion. As she knelt beside the grave, the cat turned its head to look at her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Sarah felt an inexplicable wave of calm wash over her. It was as if the cat understood her pain, silently offering comfort in a way no human could. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't try to wipe them away. Instead, she reached out tentatively, half expecting the cat to retreat. To her surprise, it leaned into her touch, pressing its soft fur against her palm. From that day forward, Sarah made it a habit to visit the grave every morning. She brought food and water for the cat, which she now called Midnight, and spent hours sitting beside it talking about Emily. Sometimes she shared happy memories, their trips to the park, the silly jokes Emily loved to tell, the way she danced around the house when her favorite song came on. Other times she poured out her grief, confessing how lost and broken she felt without her daughter. Midnight listened silently, its presence a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. The bond between Sarah and Midnight grew stronger with each passing day. Neighbors began noticing the change in Sarah. Her once dull eyes now held a spark of determination, and though her sadness hadn't disappeared, she seemed more grounded, more willing to engage with the world around her. Some even joked that Midnight was acting as her guardian angel, guiding her through the darkest chapter of her life. But not everyone in the town was convinced. Skeptics argued that the cat was just a coincidence, a random stray that happened to wander into the cemetery and stay put. Others dismissed the stories of its strange behavior as exaggerations or wishful thinking. Still, the controversy only fueled people's curiosity, drawing more visitors to the gravesite. Strangers came from neighboring towns, eager to catch a glimpse of the legendary black cat. They left offerings, flowers, toys, handwritten notes, turning the area around Emily's grave into a makeshift shrine. Despite the growing attention, Midnight remained unfazed. It stayed loyal to its post, guarding the grave with unwavering dedication. Whether it truly understood the significance of its role or was simply following instinct, no one could say for sure. What was clear, however, was that it had become a symbol of hope, not just for Sarah but for anyone struggling with loss or hardship. In its quiet, unassuming way, Midnight reminded them that even in the darkest moments there is light to be found. As weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself relying less on the past and more on the present. Midnight had taught her to focus on the here and now, to cherish the little joys that life still offered. She started volunteering at a local animal shelter, dedicating her time to caring for stray cats like Midnight. It was her way of honoring Emily's memory, channeling her grief into something positive. And though she missed her daughter terribly, she knew that Emily's spirit lived on, not just in her heart, but in the countless lives touched by kindness and compassion. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Midnight's role in her journey was far from over. The mysterious cat still had secrets to reveal, mysteries to unravel, and miracles to perform. But for now, its mere presence was enough, a silent promise that love endures, transcending even death itself. As the weeks passed, Midnight's presence at Emily's grave became a fixture in the town's collective consciousness. The stories about the black cat spread far beyond the borders of the small community, attracting visitors from neighboring towns and even distant cities. People came for different reasons, some out of curiosity, others seeking solace or answers to their own questions about loss and life. The cemetery, once a quiet and somber place, transformed into a site of pilgrimage, bustling with activity. Every morning, Sarah arrived at the gravesite with fresh food and water for midnight. She had grown accustomed to the routine, finding comfort in the predictability of it all. Each visit felt like a conversation with her daughter, mediated by the silent, yet expressive cat. Midnight had become more than just an animal. It was a bridge between Sarah and the memories she cherished most. But as much as she appreciated the bond they shared, Sarah couldn't ignore the growing mystery surrounding the feline. Why did it stay? What did it want? And why did it seem so connected to Emily? Dr. Martin Lewis continued his observations, documenting every detail he could gather. He visited the cemetery almost daily, often bringing treats or toys to see how Midnight would react. Over time, he noticed patterns that defied logic. For instance, the cat seemed particularly responsive when someone spoke about kindness or love, qualities Emily was known for during her short life. It would perk up its ears, flick its tail, or even meow softly, as if acknowledging the sentiment. On one occasion, Dr. Lewis brought a recording of children laughing, thinking it might evoke a reaction. To his astonishment, Midnight stood up and walked in circles on the headstone, its movements deliberate and purposeful. Word of these peculiar behaviors reached Sarah, who began paying closer attention herself. One afternoon, while sitting beside the grave, she decided to test Midnight's responses. She pulled out her phone and played a video of Emily singing a song she had learned in school. The moment the sound filled the air, Midnight froze, its green eyes wide and fixed on the device. Then, slowly, it lay down on the headstone, curling into a ball as though listening intently. Sarah watched in awe, her heart swelling with emotion. Was this really happening? Could Midnight somehow sense Emily's presence in the recording? The more Sarah interacted with the cat, the more she felt drawn to uncover its secrets. She started spending hours researching online, reading articles about animals and their uncanny abilities. She learned about cats being highly intuitive creatures, capable of sensing emotions and changes in their environment. Some cultures believed cats were spiritual guides, able to traverse realms beyond human understanding. While Sarah wasn't sure what to believe, the idea resonated with her. After all, Midnight didn't act like any ordinary stray. It carried an aura of wisdom and purpose that defied explanation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah sat alone with Midnight. The cemetery was unusually quiet, the usual stream of visitors having gone home for the day. She leaned back against the cool stone of the headstone, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine that Emily might still be near, that her spirit lingered in some form, watching over her family and friends. Midnight, she whispered, breaking the silence. Do you know something? We don't? Are you protecting her? The cat turned its head to look at her, its green eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. It didn't move or make a sound, but Sarah swore she saw something flicker in its gaze, a glimmer of understanding, perhaps, or reassurance. That night, Sarah dreamed of Emily. In the dream, her daughter was standing in a field of wildflowers, smiling brightly. "Mom," Emily said, her voice soft but clear, "don't be sad. I'm okay." Behind her, Sarah thought she saw the silhouette of a black cat, its tail swishing lazily as it wandered through the flowers. When she woke up, tears streaming down her face, she felt a strange sense of peace. It was as if Emily had reached out to her, reminding her that love transcends death. Meanwhile, the town's fascination with Midnight only grew stronger. People left gifts at the gravesite, small tokens of gratitude or hope. Toys, ribbons, and trinkets adorned the area around the headstone, creating a colorful mosaic of remembrance. Children drew pictures of cats and angels, taping them to nearby trees. Others wrote heartfelt letters sharing their own stories of loss and healing, Sarah read each one, touched by the outpouring of support and connection. Though the offerings were meant for Midnight, they also served as tributes to Emily, celebrating the impact she had made in such a short time. Despite the positive attention, not everyone viewed Midnight favorably. A few skeptics dismissed the phenomenon as nonsense, attributing the cat's behavior to coincidence or clever marketing by local businesses eager to capitalize on the story. One man, a gruff farmer named Harold, publicly declared that the whole thing was a load of hogwash. He claimed the cat was probably trained to perform tricks for food and accused Sarah of exploiting her daughter's memory for attention. His harsh words stung, but Sarah chose not to engage. She knew the truth in her heart, and that was enough. Others, however, were deeply moved by Midnight's presence. Among them was a young woman named Clara, who had recently lost her newborn baby. Devastated and unable to cope, she stumbled upon the gravesite one afternoon while wandering aimlessly through the cemetery. Seeing Midnight sitting vigil gave her a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. She sat down beside the grave, tears streaming down her face, and poured out her grief to the cat. To her surprise, Midnight climbed onto her lap, purring softly. That simple act of companionship helped Clara begin the long process of healing. From then on, she visited regularly, finding strength in the unspoken bond she shared with the mysterious feline. Sarah noticed the effect Midnight had on people like Clara and realized that her daughter's legacy was continuing in unexpected ways. Through the cat, Emily's kindness and compassion lived on, touching lives far beyond what anyone could have imagined. It was as if Midnight had been sent to remind the world of the power of love and connection, even in the face of unimaginable loss. As autumn approached, the leaves turned golden and red, carpeting the ground with vibrant color. The cemetery took on a new beauty, its serenity enhanced by the gentle rustling of wind through the trees. Midnight remained steadfast, its sleek black coat contrasting sharply with the fiery hues around it. Sarah often marveled at how perfectly the cat fit into the scene, as though it belonged there, as though it had always been part of Emily's story. One crisp morning, as Sarah placed a bowl of fresh milk beside Midnight, she felt a sudden urge to speak aloud. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "for staying, for helping me find my way back. I don't know why you're here, but I'm grateful." Midnight looked up at her, its green eyes shining with an intelligence that went beyond mere instinct. Then, without warning, it stood up, stretched lazily, and leaped gracefully onto the headstone. It gazed down at the grave for a moment before turning to Sarah and letting out a soft, deliberate meow. In that instant, Sarah felt a profound shift within herself. The grief that had weighed so heavily on her chest since Emily's passing began to loosen its grip. She still missed her daughter, terribly, but the sharp edges of her pain softened, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude. Midnight wasn't just a symbol of hope. It was a reminder that love never truly disappears. It transforms, evolves, and finds new ways to shine. Little did Sarah know, Midnight's role in her journey was far from over. The mysterious cat still held surprises in store, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. But for now, its steady presence was enough. A beacon of light guiding her through the shadows of sorrow toward a future filled with possibility. As autumn deepened, the air grew colder and the days became shorter. The cemetery took on a hauntingly beautiful appearance, with mist rolling in during the early mornings and frost clinging to the gravestones. Midnight remained a constant presence. At Emily's grave, its sleek black fur standing out against the muted colors of the season. Sarah continued her daily visits, finding solace in the routine of caring for the cat and sitting quietly beside the grave. Each visit felt like a sacred ritual, a moment stolen from the chaos of life to connect with something greater than herself. One evening, as a storm brewed on the horizon, Sarah decided to make one last trip to the cemetery before heading home. The sky was an ominous shade of gray, heavy with clouds that promised rain. She carried a small umbrella but doubted it would offer much protection if the weather turned severe. Still, she couldn't stay away. Something about the atmosphere, the electricity in the air, The rustling leaves felt charged with anticipation, as though the world itself was holding its breath. When she arrived, Midnight was perched atop the headstone as usual, its green eyes gleaming in the dim light. The cat seemed unusually alert, its ears twitching at every sound. Sarah knelt down and placed a dish of food on the ground, calling softly, "Here you go, Midnight. Eat up before the storm hits." But instead of jumping down to eat, the cat stayed where it was, staring intently at the grave below. Sarah frowned, puzzled by its behavior. "What is it, boy?" she asked gently. "What are you trying to tell me?" As if in response, a sudden gust of wind swept through the cemetery, sending dried leaves swirling around her feet. Thunder rumbled in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Sarah glanced nervously at the darkening sky, debating whether she should leave. But something kept her rooted to the spot, a pull she couldn't explain, as though invisible threads were tugging at her heart. Then it happened. A flash of lightning illuminated the entire cemetery, casting sharp shadows across the graves. In that split second, Sarah saw something extraordinary. A faint golden glow emanating from beneath the soil where Emily's casket lay buried. Her breath caught in her throat, and she froze, unsure if what she was seeing was real or a trick of the light. But as the thunder echoed overhead, the glow intensified, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "Emily?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. She reached out instinctively, her hand hovering just above the earth. Tears streamed down her face as she called out again, louder this time. "Emily, is that you?" The glow brightened momentarily, and a warm breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying with it the sweet scent of wildflowers. It was unmistakable. The same fragrance Emily used to love, the one that had filled their home on sunny afternoons. Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the sensation. For a brief moment, she could almost feel her daughter's presence, as though Emily were standing right beside her, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. Midnight let out a soft meow, drawing Sarah's attention back to the present. The cat had jumped down from the headstone and was now sitting directly over the glowing patch of earth, its tail curled neatly around its paws. Its green eyes locked onto Sarah's, and she swore she saw understanding, or perhaps even reassurance, in its gaze. "What does it mean?" Sarah murmured, more to herself than to the cat. "Are you showing me this? Is she still here?" The storm broke suddenly, drenching the cemetery in sheets of rain. Lightning flashed repeatedly, illuminating the scene in stark bursts of light. Yet despite the chaos around her, Sarah felt an inexplicable sense of calm. She knew, deep in her heart, that this wasn't random or coincidental. This was a message, a sign meant specifically for her. Kneeling in the mud, soaked to the bone, Sarah pressed her palms against the glowing earth. She didn't care about the cold or the rain. All that mattered was the connection she felt in that moment. "I hear you, sweetheart," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'll be okay, I promise." For several minutes, she stayed there, letting the rain wash over her as the glow gradually faded. When it finally disappeared, completely, the cemetery returned to its normal state, a quiet, somber place lit only by the occasional flash of lightning. Midnight climbed back onto the headstone, shaking off droplets of water from its fur, and resumed its vigilant posture as though nothing unusual had occurred. By the time Sarah made her way home, the storm had begun to subside. Her clothes clung to her skin, and her hair hung in damp strands around her face, but she didn't feel cold anymore. Instead, she felt lighter, as though a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. She replayed the events of the evening, in her mind, trying to make sense of what she had experienced. Was it truly Emily reaching out to her, or was it her own grief manifesting in a vivid, surreal way? Over the next few days, Sarah found it difficult to focus on anything else. She told no one about the glowing light, not even Dr. Lewis, who continued his observations of Midnight with unwavering dedication. Part of her worried that others wouldn't believe her, while another part feared that sharing the experience might diminish its significance. It was hers alone, a private moment of connection with her daughter that no one else could fully understand. But the townspeople noticed a change in Sarah nonetheless. Gone was the hollow look in her eyes, replaced by a quiet strength and determination. She began volunteering more frequently at the animal shelter, throwing herself into the work with renewed energy. She also started organizing community events using the offerings left at Emily's grave to create care packages for families in need. The toys, blankets, and handwritten notes were distributed to children facing hardships, spreading kindness and hope throughout the town. Midnight, too, seemed different after that night. While it remained loyal to its post at the gravesite, it began venturing farther afield during the day, exploring the cemetery and interacting with visitors. Some claimed they saw it leading lost tourists to Emily's grave, while others reported feeling inexplicably comforted after encountering the cat. One elderly woman, grieving the recent loss of her husband, swore that Midnight had appeared at her doorstep late one evening, meowing insistently until she followed it to the cemetery. There, under the pale light of the moon, she found herself crying freely for the first time since her husband's death, a cathartic release that helped her begin healing. Dr. Lewis continued documenting these accounts, fascinated by the cat's apparent ability to connect with people on such a profound level. He theorized that Midnight might possess an extraordinary sensitivity to human emotions, allowing it to provide comfort in ways that transcended language. Or perhaps, he mused, there was something more mystical at play, something science couldn't yet explain. Sarah, however, needed no explanation. To her, Midnight was proof that love endures beyond death, bridging the gap between worlds in ways both subtle and profound. Every time she visited the gravesite, she felt closer to Emily, as though her daughter's spirit lingered nearby, watching over her family and friends. And though the pain of losing Emily would never fully disappear, Sarah had learned to carry it differently, to let it shape her rather than define her. The mysterious events surrounding Midnight sparked debates throughout the town. Some embraced the idea of a miracle, seeing the cat as a divine messenger sent to guide them through their darkest moments. Others dismissed it as superstition, attributing the stories to overactive imaginations or clever storytelling. But regardless of their beliefs, everyone agreed on one thing. Midnight had brought the community together in unexpected ways. People who had once kept to themselves now gathered regularly at the cemetery, sharing stories and forming bonds over their shared experiences of loss and healing. Strangers became friends, united by the simple act of leaving flowers or notes at Emily's grave. Even Harold, the skeptical farmer who had mocked the phenomenon, softened his stance after witnessing the positive impact it had on those around him. Though he still refused to admit publicly that Midnight was anything special, he occasionally stopped by the gravesite to leave a handful of sunflower seeds, a silent gesture of respect. As winter approached, the cemetery transformed once again, blanketed in snow that sparkled like diamonds under the pale sunlight. Midnight adapted effortlessly to the changing seasons, its sleek black coat blending seamlessly with the icy landscape. Sarah bundled up warmly for her daily visits, bringing extra blankets and heated pads to ensure the cat stayed comfortable. Together they braved the cold, finding warmth in each other's company and in the memories they shared. Through it all, Midnight remained a steadfast companion, a silent guardian whose presence reminded everyone of the enduring power of love. Whether it was truly a miracle or simply a remarkable coincidence, no one could say for sure. What mattered most was the effect it had on those who encountered it, the way it inspired hope, fostered connection, and encouraged healing. And so, as the year drew to a close, Sarah found herself reflecting on everything that had transpired since Emily's passing. Though the journey had been painful and fraught with challenges, she realized that she had grown stronger because of it. Midnight had taught her to embrace the unknown, to trust in the unseen forces that guide us through life's most difficult moments. Most importantly, it had shown her that even in the depths of sorrow there is always. The story of Midnight and the glowing light at Emily's grave continued to ripple through the town, sparking conversations in homes, coffee shops, and community gatherings. People couldn't stop talking about it, some with awe, others with skepticism. But everyone had an opinion. The divide between believers and doubters grew wider as the weeks passed, turning the cemetery into a battleground of sorts for differing perspectives. On one side were those who saw midnight as a miracle, living symbol of hope, love, and divine intervention. They pointed to the countless stories of people who claimed to have been comforted or even healed by their encounters with the cat. Clara, the young mother who had lost her newborn baby, became a vocal advocate for this view. She often shared how Midnight's presence had helped her find the strength to keep going when she felt like giving up. "It's not just a cat," she told anyone who would listen. "There's something special about it, something sacred." Others, however, remained firmly grounded in logic and reason. Harold, the gruff farmer, led this group, dismissing the glowing light as nothing more than a trick of the weather or Sarah's overactive imagination. He argued that Midnight was simply a stray drawn to the offerings left at the gravesite, and its behavior could easily be explained by basic animal instincts. "Folks are desperate for answers," he said during a heated discussion at the local diner. "They see what they want to see because it makes them feel better, but that doesn't make it real." Despite the backlash, the believers outnumbered the skeptics. The makeshift shrine around Emily's grave grew larger every day, adorned with flowers, candles, toys, and handwritten notes. Some visitors traveled from faraway towns, hoping to catch a glimpse of Midnight or perhaps experience a moment of connection themselves. A few even claimed to have seen the glowing light firsthand, though their accounts varied widely. One man swore the entire gravesite lit up like daylight, while another described a faint shimmer that pulsed rhythmically, almost like breathing. Sarah tried to stay out of the debate, focusing instead on her daily visits to the cemetery. She knew what she had witnessed that stormy night: the golden glow, the scent of wildflowers, the overwhelming sense of peace, and she didn't need validation from anyone else. Still, the growing attention made her uneasy. She worried that the focus on Midnight might overshadow Emily's memory, reducing her daughter's legacy to a sideshow spectacle. To combat this, she began organizing events that celebrated Emily's life, rather than the mystery surrounding her death. One such event was a charity fundraiser held at the town hall. Sarah called it Emily's Garden, inspired by her daughter's love for nature and animals. Local artists donated paintings and sculptures, bakers contributed homemade treats, and musicians performed songs written in Emily's honor. All proceeds went to building a small park near the cemetery, a peaceful space where families could gather, children could play, and stray animals could find shelter. Midnight, of course, played a starring role in the festivities. Sarah set up a booth featuring photos of the cat alongside heartfelt letters from people whose lives it had touched. The fundraiser was a resounding success, drawing hundreds of attendees, and raising enough money to break ground on the project within months. As Sarah stood on stage thanking the crowd, she felt a surge of pride, not just for what they had accomplished together, but for the way the community had rallied around Emily's memory. Even Harold showed up, albeit reluctantly, and grumbled something about good intentions before leaving early. It wasn't much, but Sarah took it as a small victory. Meanwhile, Dr. Martin Lewis continued his observations of Midnight, determined to uncover the truth behind the cat's mysterious behavior. He spent hours each week documenting its interactions with visitors, noting patterns and anomalies. What fascinated him most was the cat's uncanny ability to respond to emotional cues. For example, when someone approached the grave visibly upset, Midnight would often move closer, rubbing against their legs or curling up beside them. Conversely, if someone seemed indifferent or hostile, the cat would retreat to the headstone, maintaining a safe distance. Dr. Lewis also experimented with sound recordings, playing various noises to gauge Midnight's reactions. Music elicited little response, but the sound of laughter, especially children's laughter, consistently drew the cat's attention. On one occasion, he played a recording of Emily's voice, provided by Sarah, and watched in amazement as Midnight leapt onto the headstone, its tail swishing rhythmically as though keeping time with the words. These findings only deepened the mystery, leaving Dr. Lewis both intrigued and frustrated. "If only I could understand what's going on inside that cat's mind," he muttered to himself one evening after another inconclusive session. As winter tightened its grip on the town, the cemetery transformed into a serene, snow-covered haven. Midnight adapted effortlessly to the cold, its sleek black fur providing insulation against the biting winds. Sarah bundled up warmly for her daily visits, bringing heated pads and blankets to ensure the cat stayed comfortable. Together they braved the icy temperatures, finding solace in the quiet beauty of the season. But the harsh weather brought challenges as well. One particularly brutal snowstorm forced the town into lockdown, cutting off access to the cemetery for several days. When Sarah finally managed to visit after the storm subsided, she found Midnight huddled beneath a tree, shivering despite its thick coat. Her heart broke at the sight, and she immediately scooped the cat into her arms, wrapping it in a fleece blanket. "You poor thing," she whispered, cradling it close. "I'm so sorry." That night, Sarah brought Midnight home with her, setting up a cozy bed near the fireplace. At first, she worried that removing the cat from the gravesite might upset the delicate balance they had created, but Midnight seemed content in its new surroundings. It explored the house cautiously, pausing occasionally to sniff at family photos or curl up on Emily's old stuffed bunny. Watching the cat interact with her daughter's belongings filled Sarah with a bittersweet mix of joy and sorrow. In many ways, Midnight felt like a piece of Emily, a tangible reminder of the bond they had shared. Over the next few weeks, Midnight split its time between the house and the cemetery, gradually earning the trust of Sarah's friends and neighbors. Children adored the cat, giggling as it chased string toys or lounged lazily in sunbeams. Adults marveled at its intelligence, noting how it seemed to understand commands and anticipate needs. Even Harold softened further, grudgingly admitting that the cat was smarter than most critters after witnessing it open a cabinet door to retrieve a bag of treats. Yet despite these moments of levity, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Midnight's purpose was far from fulfilled. The glowing light she had seen during the storm lingered in her thoughts, a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Was it truly a sign from Emily? Or was it something else entirely? A glimpse into a realm beyond human understanding? Whatever the answer, Sarah knew that Midnight held the key. One frosty morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, casting long shadows across the cemetery, Sarah arrived early to check on Midnight. The cat was sitting atop the headstone as usual, its green eyes gleaming in the pale light. As she approached, she noticed something unusual, a faint shimmer emanating from the earth below, similar to what she had seen during the storm. Her breath caught in her throat and she froze, unsure whether to step closer or retreat. Midnight let out a soft meow, drawing her attention. It jumped down from the headstone and walked toward her, stopping just a few feet away. Then, to her astonishment, it turned back toward the grave and sat down, gazing intently at the shimmering patch of earth. Sarah hesitated, then knelt beside the cat, her heart pounding. "Is this you?" she whispered, reaching out tentatively. "Are you showing me again?" The shimmer brightened momentarily, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. A warm breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying with it the familiar scent of wildflowers. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she pressed her palms against the glowing earth, feeling an overwhelming sense of connection. For a brief moment, she could almost hear Emily's laughter echoing in the distance, clear and joyful. When the shimmer faded, Sarah sat back on her heels, trembling with emotion. Midnight climbed into her lap, purring softly, and she hugged it close, burying her face in its fur. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice choked with gratitude. "Thank you for bringing her back to me, even if it's just for a moment." Though the experience left her shaken, it also filled her with renewed determination. She realized that Midnight wasn't just a messenger, it was a bridge, a connection between worlds that allowed her to feel close to Emily in ways she hadn't thought possible. And as long as the cat remained by her side, she knew she would never truly be alone. The town buzzed with excitement when word of the latest glowing incident spread. Believers hailed it as proof of Midnight's miraculous nature, while skeptics doubled down on their explanations. But for Sarah, none of that mattered. What mattered was the bond she shared with the cat, and the unshakable belief that love transcends even death itself. As winter gave way to spring, the town began to feel a renewed sense of hope. The snow melted, revealing patches of green grass and budding flowers. Birds returned to the trees, their cheerful songs filling the air. Life seemed to awaken all around, mirroring the transformation taking place within Sarah and the community. Midnight, too, appeared livelier, spending more time exploring the cemetery and interacting with visitors who came to pay their respects, or simply marvel at its presence. But then, one crisp morning in early April, something unexpected happened. Midnight vanished. Sarah arrived at the cemetery as usual, carrying a basket of food and fresh water. She called out softly, expecting to see the sleek black cat perched atop Emily's headstone. But there was no sign of it. The grave sat undisturbed, save for the faint paw prints left behind in the damp soil. Panic gripped Sarah's heart as she searched the surrounding area, calling Midnight's name over and over again. "Where are you?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please don't leave me." Days turned into weeks, and despite her best efforts, Sarah couldn't find Midnight anywhere. Posters went up around town, asking if anyone had seen the mysterious black cat, but no leads emerged. Some speculated that Midnight had simply moved on, while others feared the worst, that it might have fallen victim to an accident or illness. For Sarah, the loss felt like another blow, reopening wounds she thought had begun to heal. Without Midnight by her side, the gravesite felt emptier than ever, and the vibrant energy that once filled the cemetery seemed to fade. Yet, even in Midnight's absence, its impact lingered. The makeshift shrine at Emily's grave continued to grow, with people leaving offerings not just for the cat but also for Sarah herself. Letters of encouragement, small gifts, and heartfelt messages of support. Strangers stopped her on the street to share stories of how Midnight had touched their lives, reminding her that the bond they had shared extended far beyond her personal grief. Slowly but surely, Sarah found strength in these connections, realizing that Midnight's legacy wasn't tied solely to its physical presence. It lived on in the love and kindness it had inspired. One afternoon, as Sarah sorted through donations at the animal shelter where she volunteered, she noticed a young girl standing shyly near the entrance. The child couldn't have been older than 7, her curly hair framing a face so familiar that Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just the resemblance to Emily that struck her, it was the bright-eyed curiosity, the same spark of joy and wonder that her daughter had possessed. "Hi there," Sarah said gently, kneeling down to meet the girl's gaze. "Are you looking for someone?" The girl nodded hesitantly, clutching a small black kitten tightly against her chest. Its fur was sleek and shiny, its green eyes gleaming with intelligence. I think this is your cat," she stammered, holding out the kitten toward Sarah. "He followed me home yesterday. Is he yours?" For a moment, Sarah was speechless. The kitten looked almost identical to Midnight. Same markings, same piercing gaze, but smaller, younger. Could it be? Had Midnight somehow sent this little one to take its place? Or was it merely a coincidence? "I don't know," Sarah admitted finally, reaching out to stroke the kitten's soft fur. It purred instantly, leaning into her touch with a familiarity that took her aback. "But thank you for bringing him here." The girl smiled shyly before introducing herself as Lily. She explained that she and her mother had recently moved to town after losing their home in a fire. They were struggling to adjust to their new life, but finding the kitten had brought them comfort during a difficult time. "I named him Shadow," Lily added proudly, "because he's always following me around." Sarah chuckled softly, feeling a lump rise in her throat. There was something about this encounter, about Lily and Shadow, that felt profoundly meaningful, as though the universe had orchestrated it for a reason. She invited the pair inside the shelter, offering Lily a tour while sharing stories about Midnight and Emily. By the end of their visit, Lily's initial shyness had melted away, replaced by laughter and excitement. Over the next few weeks, Lily and Shadow became regular fixtures in Sarah's life. The girl visited the shelter often, eager to help care for the animals and learn more about their needs. Shadow, meanwhile, quickly made himself at home, curling up beside Sarah whenever she sat down to rest. Though he lacked Midnight's mysterious aura, his playful antics and affectionate nature brought light back into her days. As the months passed, Sarah found herself embracing a new chapter of her life. She threw herself into her work at the shelter, advocating for stray cats like Midnight and Shadow, and organizing adoption events to find them loving homes. Her efforts earned her recognition in the community, and soon she became known as the Cat Lady of the town, a title she wore with pride. Lily, too, flourished under Sarah's guidance. With Shadow by her side, she grew more confident, making friends at school and participating in community activities. One day, while helping Sarah organize supplies at the shelter, Lily asked a question that caught Sarah off guard. "Do you think Shadow is like Midnight?" she asked innocently. "Like, maybe they're connected somehow." Sarah paused, considering the question carefully. She didn't have an answer, not one rooted in logic anyway, but she chose to respond from the heart. "I think love never really leaves us," she said softly, smiling at the girl. "It transforms, evolves, and finds new ways to shine. Maybe Shadow is here to remind us of that." By summer, the park dedicated to Emily, Emily's Garden, was complete. A grand opening ceremony drew hundreds of residents who gathered to celebrate the spirit of kindness and compassion that Emily had embodied. Statues of cats adorned the pathways, and a large mural depicting Emily playing with Midnight stood at the center of the space. Children ran freely through the playground, their laughter echoing in the warm breeze. Sarah watched from a bench. Shadow curled contentedly in her lap, as Lily joined a group of kids chasing bubbles across the grass. In that moment, surrounded by joy and laughter, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. Midnight's disappearance still tugged at her heart, but she understood now that its purpose had been fulfilled. It had guided her through the darkest days of her grief, teaching her to find light in the shadows and love in unexpected places. And though it was gone, its spirit lived on, not just in Shadow, but in every act of kindness sparked by its presence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She could almost hear Emily's voice whispering in her ear, "Mom, I'm okay, keep going." When she opened her eyes, she saw Lily waving enthusiastically from across the park, Shadow darting playfully at her feet. Smiling through tears, Sarah realized that love truly never dies. It simply transforms, guiding us forward in ways we can't always predict. And sometimes, it arrives in the form of a mysterious black cat, ready to lead us back to ourselves.